Well, we are going to get started in just about 1 minute. We're getting everyone brought over from other meetings, but wanted to just give you a chance to say hi in the chat. Let us know what office you're coming from. And again, thank you so much for taking time to join our Well at Work session. So feel free to drop in the chat what office you're coming from and your name. We'd love to hear from you. We've got some OHS folks, Bisbee for our grants management. Welcome ANA, CB. Awesome. Looks like we have a lot of people from a lot of our different offices. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining. We're really excited that you are here. I'm Laura White. I'm the Director of Employee Experience and Chief Wellbeing Officer here at ACF, and I'm really excited for you to be here with us today. My wonderful colleagues are all here with us, but I'm super excited to introduce Dramatic Chambers. She is a dear friend of ours in the Employee Experience and Wellbeing team. She's also a superpower of ACF. She brings years of experience in human services and in child welfare and a variety of other spaces when it comes to social services. She has an incredible background, and we're so lucky to have her here at ACF. She leads a lot of our lived experience spaces. She serves in the Assistant Secretary's office as a senior leader there. So she will be opening us up today and providing opening remarks and also running us through some of the agenda. So Dramatic, please welcome to welcoming us, but also just thank you for your leadership and everything that you do for ACF. And we're really excited to have you here today. So again, everyone, welcome to our Well at Work session, and Dramatic is going to introduce us to our topic and everything that we're doing today. So take it away, Dramatic.
Thank you so much, Laura, and hello, everyone. It's so good to see you gathered at our Well at Work session hosted by our ACF Employee Experience and Wellness Division. As Laura stated, I'm Dramatic Chambers, and I have the pleasure of introducing our Well at Work topic and our wonderful facilitator. At ACF, we have a lofty mission to care for children and families across our nation. Prioritizing our wellness is not only essential in our work, but it also allows us to serve our recipients more fully and for the long term. Each of us was drawn to ACF for a reason. Take a moment to think about your reason. Perhaps it was a unique skill set or past experience or a strong sense of purpose and meaning in this work. Whatever it was, the work we do, no matter the task, has a meaningful ripple effect impacting and changing lives for the better. The theme of today's conversation, nurturing resilience and coping with secondary traumatic stress, or STS, is an important and deeply relevant topic for our employees. The EX and Wellness team listened to your feedback on providing a safe space to discuss STS. And our goal for today is to dive into secondary traumatic stress in a way that gives you hope, tools, and perspective. That makes us stronger as individuals, as an organization. Whether you join us today with little or a great deal of knowledge about this topic, STS is a serious risk that comes with the work we do. And we want you to know STS is both preventable and treatable, and there are ways to navigate and advocate for support for your own health and the health of our colleagues. So I encourage you as we go through this training today to bring a to focus rests on well-being, prevention, and self-care. Next slide. Here you'll find the agenda for today. Following the introduction and ground rules for today's session, we'll move into the definition of STS and professional stress. From there, we'll discuss both how this manifests in an organizational and individual levels. Then we'll have the opportunity to connect with our colleagues, to discuss case scenarios, review the wealth of follow-up materials you receive after this session, and then we'll wrap our time together. Next slide. Let's take a moment here to review this disclaimer. All information presented here today is intended for general knowledge only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment for specific medical conditions. You should seek prompt medical care for any specific health issues. Next slide. As we intentionally create a safe space for shared conversation on this important topic, here are a few important do's and don'ts to keep in mind during our time today. Do utilize the chat feature to be an active participant in the forum. Engage openly and honestly by asking questions and sharing your perspectives if you are comfortable. Offer respect and non-judgment of the perspective and stories of other participants. And keep confidentiality in mind. Please hold the specifics of what is shared within the group, but feel free to share your key takeaways. Speak from your heart, use I language, and be as present as possible. Now for our don'ts. Please don't feel pressure to share anything you aren't comfortable with. And should you ever need to do so, please take a break and walk away if you need some space. To respect and maintain confidentiality of colleagues and officers, please do not reveal names or other identifying information about those with whom you work. Next slide. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Raven Cuellar, who will be our facilitator for our time together today. Dr. Raven is an assistant professor and licensed clinical psychologist at the University of New Mexico's Health Sciences. She's the co-chair of the Secondary Traumatic Stress Collaborative Group and an active member and leader in the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. She works with professionals of all types. Dr. Raven, thank you for your time, your compassion, and your partnership and preparation for our time together today. We are grateful to have you here and appreciate your guidance on this important topic. I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you all for having me and for taking this time to spotlight such an important topic, supporting all types of professionals around recognizing and responding to secondary traumatic stress is really my main passion work. And I'm so glad to be here with you all today. I'm going to get us set up with our slides and dive right in. Okay. There we go. Okay, so first and foremost, our lofty goals for our time together today include really being able to name and validate the risks associated with working and helping professionals of all types that have high trauma exposure. And that includes everyone here today. To learn strategies to reduce the impact of STS, which I will say in short, instead of secondary traumatic stress, which is kind of a mouthful for the remainder of our time together, and to support well-being in staff. To understand how addressing STS is truly an ethical mandate for organizations and individuals working in trauma exposed environments and systems. And finally, to give everybody time to really reflect and connect around your personal experiences and your whys, your reasons for doing this work, and what can help you stay connected to kind of your personal mission and meaning and purpose to STS and other types of professional distress reactions. Okay. I'd like to highlight first that STS is one of the essential elements of trauma-informed care. It's really the central element that applies to supporting the workforce of all human services professionals, including those who work directly with children and families, and all those playing a role in supporting trauma-impacted youth. So we'll begin with defining STS and related terms and constructs. And just want to highlight, it's helpful to understand and normalize these very common reactions and experiences related to supporting children and families who've experienced trauma. So I think for me, STS is a necessary pitfall of working in support of trauma-exposed youth and families. And that means we all have a stake in really being able to understand how to recognize it and mitigate it. All right, here's definitions to make sure we're all aligned kind of around a common language. STS refers to the emotional distress that results when an individual hears about or learns about secondhand or reading the trauma experiences of another. For all individuals who support kids and families who've experienced trauma, hearing these trauma stories can take an emotional toll. And that cumulative toll relates to kind of the accrual over time of more and more trauma and stressor related stories as part of the work we do that eventually kind of results in an impact where we are feeling multiple types of distress. These STS symptoms can fall on a large continuum from mild to moderate to severe, and may or may not impair your functioning either at work or at home. In its most severe form, I want to point out that individuals can develop post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD from their indirect exposure without any other direct exposure. But keep in mind that most often STS symptoms can be managed without really having to take a step back at work or otherwise feel impaired in the work. What's most important is that we can monitor ourselves across time and recognize when we're experiencing a higher volume or intensity of STS symptoms and other types of professional distress. All right, I want to make sure that everyone here understands that this topic applies to each of you. And so in terms of who is at risk for STS, it is as broad as all human services professionals who support those who've experienced trauma and adversity of all types and are in a position to hear about or learn about the recounting of traumatic or high stress experiences. So this definitely includes frontline staff as well as all supervisors, administrators, all grantees, and all support staff. Really everyone in all levels and types of an organization. Importantly, this concept extends even more broadly out to all caregivers and care providers, which many of you may be parents and caregivers for elderly parents or members of your extended family, and those who have multiple types of caregiving or care providing roles are also at risk for STS. Furthermore, I want to highlight how this current time in the world and our socio-political context has many of us feeling like very concerned, committed citizens of the world who are highly distressed by the human rights violations that come with war and violence and civil unrest that's playing out in so many areas. This also might elevate or increase the risk. And finally, this pandemic context and racial reckoning that we have been living in recent years also increases the risk for so many of us for personal and collective types of trauma or toxic stress or grief and loss reactions that can intersect with one's work. And it all can contribute to that cumulative toll that creates the risk. All right, I want to highlight that sitting alongside STS are many other types of professional distress experiences that can happen all at the same time. That can include direct types of exposure to trauma or loss, both professionally or personally, vicarious trauma, which I will unpack a little more in a minute, systems failures and breakdowns, moral distress or injury, which I'll also talk a little more about, burnout as well, because that's one of the most common and pervasive types of distress experiences for helping professionals. And so there are three here that I want to go into in a little more detail because I think they're so relevant to ACF employees. First, moral distress. It's described as the stress that occurs when one believes they know the right thing to do from their own moral compass or values and ethics, but institutional or other constraints make it difficult or impossible to pursue that desired course of action. And so moral injury can really get amplified in periods of time where you don't feel like you're able to provide the type of help or support or do the work in a way that really is most needed or fits with your ethics and values. And you're still asked to move forward and find a way to play the role and do the work as well as you can. Moral injury is happening with many professionals in recent years. So it seems really important to highlight this as a kind of comorbid experience with STS. And of course, burnout, which is something that most of us know something about from a personal place. The longer you're in this type of work, it's only a matter of time until you may hit a period of relative burnout, which is the result of a high workload with too little support and too few resources, or really just having to work in such a prolonged state that becomes that it impacts you in ways that are characterized by emotional and physical exhaustion, increased kind of cynicism, quickness to anger or become more irritable or frustrated with self or others, depersonalization or feeling disconnected kind of from yourself and others, and loss of job satisfaction. And then vicarious trauma. This one is a similar concept to STS and describes the changes that can occur inside of an individual that result in shifts in expectations for trust, safety, control, self-esteem, or intimacy. And it really is the result of that cumulative exposure or impact that accrues over time. So keep in mind which of these experiences maybe you've had and which may apply to you. And I want to highlight a very important point that may seem obvious, but I want to make sure that this comes through, that the more types of distress and exposure you are exposed to at a period of time, the greater the risk and vulnerability will be for you to experience STS reactions. So this is something to hold on to and take stock of for yourself and for those around you, your coworkers and your teams. If you or others are in a period of personal adversity or loss or work-related trauma or grief, that may be an especially risky time where you're vulnerable to STS reactions. Similarly, if there's a period of time where you're feeling the pressures of systems failures and breakdowns, or less than ideal working conditions, or perhaps you're heartsick about the sociocultural or political context playing out in the world or in your sphere, then that's a time where there's a special risk. But it's not all bad news. So I want to make sure and highlight that there is this related term of compassion satisfaction, which are the positive aspects of the work that we do, such as inspiring and rewarding work that really helps you know you're making an impact and a contribution, and helps you hold on to that belief that all of the time and effort and investment you're pouring into the work can result in something you can feel proud of and good at. It's what keeps us coming back. We will do an activity to amplify compassion satisfaction a little later in this training, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so why talking about STS is important? First and foremost, I want to just amplify that ACF leadership made it really clear that many of you were asking for training and resources on this topic, and they wanted to be able to respond and meet the need. And this is so important for all of us working to support trauma-exposed children and families because of the high prevalence of trauma exposure. You know, every year, more than 10 million children in the US alone are exposed to types of trauma and abuse and neglect and adversity, which means that it ripples through and impacts all of the systems that are designed to play a role in supporting youth and families and each of us. Also, for the workforce, indirect trauma exposure like STS and burnout and these other related terms that I've just covered is not the only workplace stressor. There's normal stress and overwhelm and insufficient resources at times, inconsistent communication in the workplace, which for some has been really exacerbated in this pandemic and, dare I say, post-pandemic context. Also, many professionals have their own primary trauma histories and experiences and other types of adversity, which often increases the risk for STS. I want to really highlight that those who lead with their lived experience and bring that with them into the work are often at increased risk as well. And I just want to self-acknowledge, I am a trauma psychologist who came into the work from a personal place, which is why I realized about 12 years into my career that I needed to hurry up and learn some information about STS and what any of us can do with it, so I could mitigate that for myself, given that I lead with lived experience. Also, STS and these other stressors can lead to really unwanted outcomes like low job satisfaction, compromised professional functioning, and diminished quality of life. Important for all of us in this workforce. I also want to touch on the intersections of STS with culture, race, and historical trauma. For those who are working to support youth and families who experience lots of racism, oppression, and disproportionality, that can often increase the risk for STS. And that is especially true for professionals who identify in various ways with those they serve, or who are embedded within communities that have a lot of similarities to themselves and their histories. It just means that there are more frequent types of activating forces and triggers to incite more STS reactions. Okay, I'm going to slow down and try to summon Rachel Naomi Remen's wise words from a really great book that she wrote many years ago called Kitchen Table Wisdom, Stories That Heal. She is a physician who experienced burnout and secondary trauma many times over through her career. And she tries to help us normalize and remember that it is a necessary professional pitfall and something to recognize and mitigate, not a sign of weakness or that we're doing the work wrong if or when we experience STS and burnout. She says, the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. This sort of denial is no small matter. We burn out not because we don't care, but because we don't grieve. We burn out because we've allowed our hearts to become so filled with loss that we have no room left to care. So really, this is a reminder that each of us is responsible for trying to make sure that we can nurture and care for ourselves and make that necessary space to grieve, to respond to our STS and other types of professional distress. Okay, here's our first chance to take a look at some of the common STS signs and symptoms. This is not an exhaustive list, but are some of the really common classic STS reactions that many folks might resonate with. And I want to just invite you all to take a moment, scroll through this list, I'll read them off, and see what resonates with your experience, either currently or in the past. Increased arousal, kind of feeling fidgety in your body, or reactivity, easy to startle, or kind of volcano out with big intense emotions. Having sleep difficulties, chronic exhaustion, and our physical ailments, especially as they are more and more recurrent, maybe related to STS impacts. Having intrusive negative thoughts about work, maybe not being able to let go of those thoughts about work and carrying them home where you suffer more thinking about them on your own time. Negative expectations about yourself, about others, or the future. Feeling hopeless or helpless. Feeling inadequate, not good enough in your role. Maybe trapped, depressed. Feeling unable or less able to listen, or having deliberate avoidance of certain people, places, or situations, or maybe types of the work. Anger and cynicism, any type of mood disturbance or change. Inability to embrace complexity, when you just want everything to be simplified so you feel like you can actually keep going and make it through. Guilt, withdrawing from relationships, or feeling isolated or estranged from others, really not being able to tap into the support around you. So this is a first look at the STS signs and symptoms, and I want you to just hold this in mind when we get a little further in and learn a bit more about STS and how it shows up organizationally. We'll return back to kind of these signs and symptoms to reflect a little bit more. Okay, so we are on to our next section, where I want to make sure to unpack a bit of how STS plays out at organizational levels and how organizations inadvertently can contribute to increased risk for STS. And then very importantly, the responsibility that organizations have to provide essential training and resources and work to mitigate the effects of STS. I always like to start with a really important caution that highlights why it is so essential for organizations to address STS. And it's really this idea that when the focus of what to do about the problem of STS is put exclusively on individual professionals as their responsibility to leverage all the coping strategies and tools and deal with it on your own time, without also acknowledging the organization's role, then it implies that individuals who are experiencing STS are at fault. So we do not want to get into that sort of victim blaming sentiment. And really the remedy of what's needed here is a twofold approach where there are both organizational and individual efforts brought to bear in this resiliency building model. And it takes both kind of aims, which is why today's training makes sure to cover the organizational and individual impacts. So how organizations, not intentionally, but end up contributing to individuals' STS. I'll highlight a few of the common ones. First and foremost, when there is a high dose of exposure to indirect trauma, it just comes with the territory of working in that organization that STS will be a natural pitfall. When there's lack of awareness or attention to STS across levels of the organization, then that risk is not mitigated well. When there's inadequate training on STS, again, it is it's not the organization being as responsible as they can and should be. When there are multiple organizational stressors at play, sometimes this is inevitable. However, it increases the risk when there are kind of systems or communication breakdowns, when there is kind of too little support, when the workloads are too high, or there are unfilled positions that mean too few individuals have to do too much of the work. Inequity and discriminatory practices also very much increase individuals' risk for STS, which disproportionately falls on BIPOC members of the workforce and those with other types of oppression and marginality. Limited opportunities for leadership and professional development also increases the risk and leaves folks feeling a bit trapped or less supported in how to keep advancing in their job and leaning into their professional development goals. Not having risk reduction practices, for example, learning ways to kind of minimize the exposure in folks who are having to read lots of trauma and stressor related stories or directly intervene with traumatized youth and families. And then finally, lack of appropriate supervision and support. And then just having a less experienced workforce also contributes to the risk. Okay, I promise I won't just leave you here. We will also talk about what organizations can do. Before we dive into kind of the upside of what can be done, I want to highlight how organizations are impacted by STS. And I will briefly hover on this because I think a lot of this may seem pretty apparent. In general, we see a very negative impact in high STS exposed workforces on work performance, environment, and morale. We see compromised or poor relationships between staff and leadership or management and staff and coworkers. There's more attrition, turnover. There's more absenteeism, calling in sick or taking off periods of time, and presenteeism, showing up, but quiet quitting, as you may have heard it described, kind of just going through the motions. And then at times, STS in a prolonged sense can lead to ethical breaches where individuals may be avoidant of essential work tasks and not completing things in a timely manner. Okay, so I want to highlight a case vignette that ACF leadership kind of joined with me to develop as a way to sort of spotlight how this may play out organizationally within ACF. And the case vignette is of Toby. And I'm going to read this out loud, and then I want to invite you all to jump into the chat and help me brainstorm what organizational and individual stressors are getting highlighted here. All right, here's Toby. He's worked at ACF for 15 years, primarily serving the same region where he grew up as a child. As part of his role, he often hears stories from his grantees and state partners about their lived experience. Toby has nurtured trusting relationships with his grantees and is sometimes called upon to provide guidance in emergency situations, directly exposing him to recipient stories of trauma. He feels deeply saddened and triggered by these stories, reminding him of his own lived experiences as a child. Toby explained that while his lived experience is the primary motivator and inspiration for his 15-year pursuit of work in human services, it's taking a noticeable toll on him. Over time, Toby has become increasingly exhausted, mentally, physically, and emotionally. The stories he hears and situations he witnesses keep him awake at night, and he suffers from frequent tension headaches and back pain. Thoughts of his work are often all-consuming, and he feels a strong burden of responsibility for every child receiving services from the agency. Recently, he's called in sick a lot. He's felt hopeless and depressed, sometimes not having the energy to engage in desirable activities, and some days unable to even get out of bed. Okay, after hearing a bit about Toby, I want to invite you all to weigh into the chat any organizational stressors that you think could be contributing to Toby's experiences of STS. And I would invite you to, it's okay to infer or kind of extrapolate what might be some of those organizational stressors. Thank you. I see a brave soul has responded in the chat. Super appreciate that. Perhaps the organization doesn't have enough staff and the caseload is too high. This is exactly what I mean about like lean in and get curious about what may be going on. Is carrying a lot across the board, overwhelmed. Thank you. I'd love to hear more. There are no wrong answers here. Yes, moral distress due to the weight of responsibility that he takes on and the overload. Having no backup for emergency situations, maybe not having any outlets inside the organization to process and debrief. Yes, lack of leadership. Oh yeah, they're coming in now, and I like all of these brainstorm ideas. I'm sorry if I'm missing getting to actually say aloud all of them. Personal trauma intersecting with professional trauma, which is quite common. Yeah, needs more support from the organization. Oh yeah, lack of risk reduction activities, not having buffers. Yeah, oh, I love this, the organization's reliance on Toby's lived experience without offering adequate support to what that could mean for him and his work. Feeling the burden, yeah. Not enough outlets. Oh yeah, we're getting curious about, has he been referred to the EAP, the employee assistance provider? I love this and I agree. Okay, I want to also invite any individual stressors and STS reactions that haven't yet been named that you see getting highlighted for Toby. Some of them are coming through. Sleeplessness, yes. Yeah, the stress at work causing physical stress. I'm going back around to see what individual stressors you all have already weighed in on. Yes, serving the same region where he grew up creates lots of potential complications. Withdrawing and calling in sick, depression, hopelessness, which is manifesting in the physical health, absolutely. Yeah, lots of triggers for the childhood trauma history and reactions. Compounding of multiple stressors. That's right, they're not all work-related stressors. Okay, you guys are super savvy at this. I'm gonna go ahead and flip forward and we'll just see some of what I brainstormed. And frankly, I love what you all came up with. This is a non-exhaustive list, and so I think everything you all put in the chat is relevant and at play here. In the left column, I was brainstorming some of the organizational stressors, and I think really all of those have been named. I was inferring that maybe having to respond to emergencies spills into personal time and thus creates challenges to being able to set healthy boundaries and leave work at work. And that he may not have specific training or supervision in providing psychological and emotional support in emergency situations, which would be really essential. On the right column, I was brainstorming some individual stressors, and I think I saw most of these. I'll just highlight a few more. Feeling consumed by thoughts about his work, really not being able to kind of leave work at work and have any sense of healthy boundaries or containment. Not being able to engage in desirable activities really leaves him at risk for having an increasingly negative kind of and pervasive experience and kind of feeding and fueling more of the negative emotions and thoughts. Okay, so hopefully this case vignette helped you to try to apply some of the information you've learned so far at both of these levels, organizationally and individually. I'm going to move on to what organizations can do because we need this sort of hopeful message and really the proactive preventative approach that we can lean into. This is a non-exhaustive list, and so I want to keep you engaged in the chat if anyone wants to weigh in about what else that isn't maybe on this list, or if you want to amplify something that is here on the list that your team, that you do with your coworkers or in your area is one of those organizational practices that really helps to set a supportive kind of culture. Ways to celebrate the shining moments, catch the positives and catch the wins and actually talk about them with one another. Leaning in and maintaining the positive focus on the core mission and kind of your whys. Remembering kind of the hope and optimism and being able to convey that and kind of amplify that with one another. Building community, encouraging strong peer support. And please weigh into the chat if anybody has sort of formal or informal peer support kind of structures or options for how you can really connect and process and debrief with one another when the work is sitting heavy. Intentionally giving opportunities for connection and mentorship, especially for new staff. Some kind of agencies have a program where they will kind of match a newly hired employee, not just with a supervisor or manager, but with a more seasoned kind of staffer that is maybe more of a mentor type. Convening optional informal gatherings after any challenging or crisis event, and then providing resources of all types. Here are just a few examples, and there are many more. Workplace wellness groups, reflective practice kind of opportunities, ways to access resource and referral options such as the EAP. All right, I don't know if I've missed anything in the chat, but if you want to add something here about what organizations can do or what you really love and find meaning in that you're doing in your area, I would love to hear a bit from you all. Thank you, Annalie. Informal workplace well-being committee. Yeah, committees and groups and wellness champions are a great example. And then, yeah, how to support grieving team members and to celebrate the wins. It's a lovely example. Appreciate that. And I see another, yeah, having pairs like dyads who can partner and go to each other for questions or processing needs, group reflection and one-on-one reflection. Ooh, I'd love to learn more about the team charter with commitments by the whole group. That sounds really cool. Oh yeah, we've got a peer-led book club, meditation group. Okay, you all are doing great things. Celebrating the wins. Yeah, I mean, even things like potlucks or any kind of gathering for those who actually are together physically in person. Good, I wanted to at least wrap this organizational session with keeping in mind what can be done to mitigate the risk. And now we're going to move forward to the individual STS section, where we'll spend a little more of our time, not because it's more important for individuals to lean in and do strategies than organizations, but because I want to make sure that I'm helping to grow each of your toolkits for those who took the time to kind of join this session. There are many things that individuals can do to recognize and respond to STS and other types of professional distress reactions. So I would highlight everything in this section is broader than just STS, but includes all those related types of professional distress. This should really help mitigate all of the distress reactions. Okay, I want to start with giving a nod to an excellent kind of book and champion in the STS realm, Laura Lipsky. She has this book, Trauma Stewardship, an everyday guide to caring for self while caring for others. That is really a seminal resource that if anybody's interested and wants to maybe do a little extra kind of reading, it's a light enough and kind of a funny, quippy read, believe it or not, that has lots of kind of gems. And she reminds us we are all stewards, not just of those who allow us into their lives, not just those who we serve, but of our own capacity to be helpful. And in that way, it's a reminder that we all hold this ethical mandate to attend to our own kind of well-being and to recognize and mitigate STS when it shows up. So this is Laura Lipsky's cool tool, the 16 warning signs of professional distress. And we are going to drop into the chat the PDF resource that has all of these 16 warning signs and kind of more rich descriptions for each one. And we're going to slow down just a bit here and take a few more minutes to read each of these warning signs and see what resonates for you. And that could be what's showing up for you right now or more recently, or when you think back to a time in your professional career where you felt some of the most gnarly, intense distress. Which of these warning signs were most prevalent or really most impactful to you? Feeling helpless and hopeless. Oh, that sense that it's never enough. The work will never be done. I can't possibly take a day off work. I can't step away. It's too essential what I do. And so getting caught into that urgency and never enough feeling. Hypervigilance, less creativity, inability to embrace complexity, minimizing, chronic exhaustion, a deliberate avoidance. Oh no, I can't look at that or read that story or do that kind of task today, which gets easier and easier to keep fueling the avoidance. Dissociative moments where you're more spacey or numbed out or checked out, feeling persecuted or kind of more suspicious or mistrustful, guilt, fear, cynicism, numbing, turning towards addictions or any type of survival coping, which really can just be something as benign as comfort eating and like leaning way into so much time kind of on Netflix that you're trying to kind of numb out in any sort of spare free time, but it really pulls you out of engaging in your life. And then inflated sense of importance in one's work, Laura calls grandiosity, just to help keep us accountable that if we are catching ourselves telling us in our own minds saying, there's no way I can be sick today, I'm going to push through. No, I can't call off. No, I can't schedule a vacation. I feel too guilty. That's what she means there. So what I'd like to invite in the chat are anyone who feels right about weighing in with any of these key warning signs of professional distress, either in your own experience or that you've seen really commonly show up in your coworkers or teams. And so anyone who weighs in on the chat, I want to invite you to take comfort in the idea that this is not you having to self-proclaim or describe your own STS reactions. It's just, what have you seen most often come up? Now, as folks are deciding, I will self-ascribe that One of my main warning signs is inability to embrace complexity. I realize sometimes I'm like, nope, I can't hold all of the both and thinking and all of the perspectives. I need to just hone in and keep it moving. Diminished creativity. Yeah. Oh, that one, Annalie, getting sick as soon as you actually take time off to rest is a definite indicator. Oh yeah, that never enough kind of sentiment. Thank you all for being willing to weigh in on the chat. I see these daily. Yeah. Yeah. Avoidance, guilt, helplessness, hopelessness. And then what we want to do with as we take stock of these warning signs is really start to learn which might be your early warning signs, those that show up first or come online, and maybe get noticed either by yourself, or I will tell you, it's often my family members or my closest coworkers that over time have learned to kind of tell with me, oh, Raven, your usual creative thinking is not coming into play here. And that sometimes gets noticed, and not as a call out, but when I'm sort of saying on my trauma team, like, I feel so run down or so, burnt out. I need to like take a step back or take a day, but I can't. Then that can be a time that others hear the STS warning signs and try to just lean in and give extra support. Oh yeah, seeing the world as a negative place, that dark world view. Just looking at the chat, disengagement. Okay. The one other thing that I want to highlight in this tool that's really important is to think of this as an informal self-assessment or way to take stock of your own STS warning signs. And over time, you'll be able to recognize what constellation of warning signs show up and mean that you are out of balance and something more aggressive might be needed to help you rebalance or really mitigate the STS impacts. And this is where I really like to kind of join in and do a little bit of strategic sharing. And so I will say I have felt in my 20 years as a trauma psychologist every one of these warning signs. And I have many times over been able to be very effective and efficient in my work, even with a whole set of them. But when I get to where there are more than half that feel really intense and gnarly, that is how I know I need to rebalance and recalibrate here. I want to invite you all to use this tool and return back to it anytime it can be helpful to you. Maybe post it kind of around you in the workplace. It might be a way that others can get curious as well. Oh yeah, memory loss, right? Or feeling brain fog or fuzzy is a type of numbing and disengagement. All right, thank you all for staying active in the chat. I'm going to move forward just to make sure we can cover a lot of good information together. I want to touch on briefly the risk factors for individuals. And this is with an eye for how some of these risk factors can be mitigated. The first one, gender, cannot so easily, if at all, be mitigated. Women are at greater risk, research shows, for STS, and it's just important to know. Dose of exposure is a similar one. Sometimes you can't always step down how much exposure you're getting in terms of hearing about or reading trauma and stressor related stories. However, at times it is possible to not hover on all of the details as much. And that's one way that I try to mitigate my exposure. Having unresolved direct trauma exposure creates a greater risk. And what any of us can do about that is really think about what we need on our own kind of healing and resolution journeys. Level of support can sometimes be mitigated or altered. So if an individual is brave enough to say, I'm really feeling a lot of distress or burnout in the job, then increased support can sometimes be applied in the workplace. Having fewer years on the job is a greater risk factor. So it's important to know that we need to lean in and give lots of extra support to the younger, newer workforce. And that those who are seasoned professionals who found ways to stay in the work and sustain it are great sources of knowledge and expertise. We should go to them. Feeling a sense of competence actually lowers the risk And so the risk is greatest when folks don't have enough training and kind of evidence-based or evidence-informed strategies and tools to support the work they do. And then finally, having negative or passive coping. Those who tend to use avoidance or throwing themselves into work as a way to not have to recognize or deal with what one's facing are at greater risk. And there, the antidote is to learn and practice ways of actively coping. We'll touch on some of those here in a bit. Okay. We are not going to take time to do an individual self-assessment in this training. And in part, I always like to invite folks to do this on their own time because it tends to be so private and personal, what comes out of these self-assessments. However, I want to make sure that you all know that there are a number of free and available self-assessment instruments that you can access at any time you like. And it's a really nice way to more formally take stock of how are things shaking out for you. And so there's the secondary traumatic stress scale that my colleague Brian Bride created. Also a partner tool, the functional impairment scale, that shows you how impacted am I, and is it pretty bad, or am I feeling the STS impacts but not as impaired. And then a really popular one is the professional quality of life scale, which gives you scores for STS, burnout, and compassion satisfaction. And then there's another really cool website that my colleague Ginny Sprang at the University of Kentucky has put together and is offering to anyone. The cool thing about these screeners that cover STS, moral distress, general stress, burnout, and compassion satisfaction is that you can take them online and it immediately scores up your results and feeds them back to you, often with some recommendations about what you might do about it. And it's totally private and confidential. And so they're not collecting participants' information. It's just a resource that's available to you. There are also self-assessments for wellness, and I want to spotlight one in particular that I love using from Pat Fisher's Resilience, Balance, and Meaning sort of manual that she's offered on Tend Academy's website for free. And it looks at the domains of well-being and really also layers STS onto it. The other one I've spotlighted here is the personal balance wheel that many Indigenous folks and those who want to use sort of a less westernized, sort of kind of dominant well-being kind of framework can lean in and look at how kind of my colleagues in our NCTSN network, Shannon Prosper and Alan Rabideau, created. And you just have to kind of reach out to them. I give you some information on that in the resource guide. Okay, the rest of our time together, we're going to look at these 5 domains of recommended strategies to mitigate STS reactions. And each of these comes with various strategies and tools. We will practice kind of a few ways to enhance compassion satisfaction and lean into building resilience and well-being in our time together in the large group. And then the other domains, I want to encourage those who are able to stay with us for the latter part of the training. We'll touch on all of these kind of domains together. So first, for enhancing compassion satisfaction, this refers to those positive feelings and rewards that come with the work and the conviction that your work makes a meaningful contribution. And it's one thing to know that, but it's another thing entirely to try to lean in and allow yourself to think about it and focus on it and really amplify all the goodness that can come from remembering your whys and reflecting on them. So I was really wanting to do that together today. And here's the activity that helps us enhance our compassion satisfaction, called Remembering Your Whys. This is sort of obvious. We all have bad days at work, sometimes bad stretches professionally, but there are always moments that remind us why we do this work. So I want to slow down for a little and give you all a few minutes to think about these questions. It's okay to just hone in on a few of these and either silently reflect or maybe write and reflect on it. And after we take a few minutes silently, then we can start to share in the chat a few of them. I thought that it might feel kind of most accessible to invite folks to weigh into the chat on things you love or enjoy about your job, and then any compliments or appreciation or gratitude you've received, or things you think you do well. Very hard to kind of give oneself props and praise. And so any of those things that come up in your reflection that you want to share with your colleagues, that can help us all kind of steepen it together and really amplify that compassion satisfaction. All right, let's take a few moments silently. Okay, I want to invite folks to drop into the chat. If there's anything that you've thought of that feels okay to share, then it's one of the real gifts we can give to each other to take time and talk about these sorts of things. So you might do it in the chat. And if it doesn't feel right for you to share it in this space, I really want to invite folks to perhaps take this sort of activity and these questions and find somebody to connect with in the next few weeks in your work and share your responses to these sorts of questions. Any brave souls who feel like sharing a little bit of what they reflected on? Elizabeth, that sounds like spoken like a care provider. You really love being able to provide support and guidance to your colleagues. I'm sure they really appreciate that as well. Oh yeah, quick and timely responses and like being there, being available on an ongoing basis. Yeah, leaning into the mission, your team, working with state and tribal leaders, which is really quite a privilege. Love interacting culturally. Oh yeah, the chat is starting to fill up, so I lost. Okay. Yes. Knowing you have unique skills and knowledge to help improve the lives of Native communities. Right on. Mhm. Oh yeah, supporting new employees to get integrated and feel supported. That's such a vulnerable and critical time. Connecting with a mom about sensitive interactions with her kiddos and seeing her model that. Yes. Okay. These are the opportunities where we can really bring back to the forefront of our mind our whys and the purpose. And so I want to encourage you all to really try to keep these thoughts and reflections going and bring them into conversations. And I want to thank you all for weighing into the chat. Okay. I'm trying to be accountable to my own time, and I took a little look, and I'm going to keep us moving forward so I can touch on a few things in the resilience and wellness kind of building domain. Okay. Because these sorts of practices are so essential and important for all of us in all of the work we do, we want to touch on ways to build resilience, which include kind of stress reduction practices, any kind of calming, regulation, or relaxation practices, and any enjoyable activities that really keep you motivated, centered, and grounded. And then wellness practices include all sorts of things related to getting proper rest, nutrition, exercise and movement, and whatever helps you feel your best and sort of act like your best self. So I want to give you a few tools that I use all the time, and they are designed to be sort of funny and quippy to really stay memorable and make it easier to hold in mind. The first tool is the WTF protocol, and it is probably not that WTF that you're thinking of. This refers to walk, talk, and flush it out anytime you feel that surge of anxiety or stress or panic come on, whether it is at work or on your own time. what predictably happens is our brains get pretty scrambled with the intense acute stress reactions and panic that we feel. And so if you can't really remember what to do, try to think WTF it, because it almost feels like a WTF moment usually when we're having one of those, oh no, kind of times at work. And the practice is very simple, and it can look a lot of different ways. Any way to get moving and walk it out, to talk it out, to process or debrief with a colleague or someone else in your personal life or in your sphere that is a trusted other, and then to flush it out with usually cold liquids when we're feeling all these hot emotions and overwhelm. And we can get a flush through our sweat, through our tears, and all sorts of ways to, water, tea, anything that helps you kind of feel like you get that good system flush. And then you get bonus points if you're able to combine these activities. So my favorite one is to realize, oh, it's a WTF moment, and walk out the door with my phone, call a colleague, and be able to walk and talk with them. And I'm holding my kind of ice water. And so I'm doing all three. Just a tool to keep in mind, simple practice. And then another sort of catchy framework that helps us remember how to rest and digest, reset, and listen to the body, and really practice well-being strategies throughout the workday, and hopefully not have to save it all up for evenings and weekends when it always feels like there's too many competing demands for our time. So the PRN framework, pause, reset, and nourish framework, reminds us that just like you might take a PRN medication as needed for panic or anxiety or any like acute reactions, you can PRN it at work multiple times throughout the day. And it's as simple as taking time to pause, step back mentally, engage deep breathing or any sort of practice that helps you kind of get some quiet, and then ask yourself what's needed to reset. It's sort of any kind of relaxation activity. And if you're at work, it may not be these sorts of things listed on the slide that take a little longer to engage in, mindful movement or getting out in nature or meditation. At work, it might be a very brief sort of practice to get grounded or reset the nervous system. I'll give you one of those tools later. And then nourish is any way to replenish and feed mind, body, heart, spirit, and soul. And this really needs to be based on who you are as a human and any cultural or contextual kind of preferences and practices that you want to lean into. So I gave some brainstorm ideas, but it's really anything that helps nourish you. Laughing or singing or dancing. Sometimes with my trauma team, we get a little silly and we'll do the 2-minute dance party. And those are very fun days at work. And that's an example. Any sort of engagement in a cultural practice or ritual or way of connecting with an important person or pet or with nature can be a nice way to nourish. Okay, and because I have listed my favorite breathing practice for intense anxiety and panic, 4-7-8 breathing by Dr. Andrew Weil, I wanted to include it on the slide. I won't kind of take time to cue it up, but I do want to let you all know, if you are somebody or you support somebody who experiences really intense surges of anxiety or panic, then this breathing practice is built by a doctor of integrative medicine who calls it a natural tranquilizer for the nervous system. It's a great tool to use, and there's a nice quick kind of video demo on YouTube for how to walk through this 4-7-8 breathing. Okay. Now we're on to very quick resource roundup, and then we'll kind of take a little break before we go into our last part of today's training. I wanted to just spotlight a few NCTSN resources from my national network that are all freely available on our STS webpage. And there are multiple types of fact sheets, and then lots of tools for supervisors and managers. And I wanted to especially spotlight one. For any of you that are in a leadership position, formal or informal, we have developed a set of tools that are STS competencies for support and supervision that are expanded beyond mental health professionals and really try to kind of hit the right tone for all human services professionals. And so there is a tool that will be included kind of in your resource packet that spotlights the core competencies and a way to kind of self-assess, and then give you lots of ideas for how to grow your own competency to really give the best support and guidance and supervision that you can in an STS informed manner. Finally, NCTSN has lots of great webinars. Maybe some of you all have checked these out. There are ones that are recorded and available in English and also in Spanish. There are multiple that relate to STS, also cultural implications of STS, and then one that is specific to, that we did in support of ORR and the Unaccompanied Minor Children program that maybe some of you all viewed, and just in case you haven't, want to make sure you can access these on the Learning Center. Oops, went a little too far. Okay, here's where I want to say thank you to all of you who took the time to be with us for this first part of the training. And before we move into the latter bits, where there'll be more chance to kind of practice and reflect and discuss together, just give it a minute before we move forward, and really invite and encourage anyone who has time to stay our last, like 23 minutes, please do. And if you don't have time, then thank you so much for being here with us. This is the last bit that will focus on more practicing and discussing. And I'm going to move forward. You will recognize this. We're going to do a little more on the resilience building and wellness practices. And in particular, it seemed only right to those who were going to stay and do more practice to get to do as part of this training, a deep breathing kind of regulation and grounding practice that I love. And this is a kind of infographic kind of postcard that you can post in your office or use and return to. I want to invite everyone to take a few minutes and kind of drop into this breathing space with me. And I will cue it up, and you can check this out in any way that's right for you. Eyes open or closed, videos on or off. First, I want to invite you to take a moment and try to let your awareness go more internal and step back mentally. And we first want to turn our awareness to any sounds that you hear, near or far. Maybe the sound of my voice catches your attention. Maybe there are other near noises, the subtle sound of your computer or others around you. Watch them or hear them arise and disappear. And try to just notice them without judgment. Now we turn our awareness to noticing any body sensations that catch your attention. What parts of the body feel warm or cold? Just notice the sensations, how you're contacting the chair or the ground beneath you, how your clothes feel today, where you might feel tension or stiffness. It's okay to just notice. And if you feel called to kind of shake it out or make any stretches or subtle movements, that's good too. And finally, we notice the breath. First, without trying to change the breath, where does it first catch your awareness? Is it in the nostrils, the chest, or maybe the belly if you're very relaxed? Notice the expansion and settling of the body as you breathe. And if you like, you can start to deepen the breath, make it lower and slower down in the belly where relaxed breathing lives. And that's where you can really feel the rise and fall of the belly. That's how you know you're dropped into relaxed breathing. And let's just follow one more full inhale and exhale of the breath as we close out this brief practice. This is the kind of thing you can do anytime during the day when you notice stress starting to mount. It's a great example of a PRN practice. And I hope you can bring this one with you into your toolkit. Thanks for practicing with me. Okay, it was brief, but hopefully meaningful. I'm gonna also really name a common self-care wellness barrier, which is feeling like there's never time to actually practice wellness in the workplace. And in order to try to bust through that barrier, here's an activity, or really, it's also a handout in the resource guide that is a great thing to kind of post and maybe have available in your space, that lists a non-exhaustive list of things that you can do that really only take 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even 30 minutes. What might you be able to do and incorporate into your workday that means that you're honoring your well-being and not saving it up until you get home? And here's where I want to invite folks to weigh in the chat. If you're scrolling through this list and you see something, you're like, these are my go-tos, I do these all the time, please weigh in and let us know what practices really resonate with you or are in your toolkit, things that you like to do. Oh yeah, smile and laugh. Okay, I am not a good jokester, but I always love having a coworker who is able to give me a funny little quip or joke or story. I really value that in others. I'll give you one of mine. When I have a little more time, I do a walking meeting or supervision, and it just maybe takes an extra 5 or 10 minutes to kind of get out of the office together, but it's so rewarding getting coffee with a coworker. Yeah. What about these things that if you have 30 minutes, you can crew up and eat lunch with a coworker, or do a meditation together, or debrief or process something, or actually complete a task that you've been dreading or avoiding so that it can help you feel more uplifted. Yeah. Okay, Catherine, I love that you love to clean your workspace. Go on a walk. Yeah. Go touch grass. Love that. Yeah. Read a quick update. Okay, this is good. I hope we're just priming you all to maybe grab a few of these activities. And I want to invite you now to, if you want to set an accountability goal, what might you add into your work days in the coming months that you aren't already doing, or maybe you forgot that are really helpful to do? If there are any of these that are resonating with you, hold that in mind and consider where and how that might get embedded into your workflow. Keep moving forward. Okay, this is meant to be kind of catchy and quippy. I bet many of us do these sorts of things. I always need to get accountable to myself here. This idea of I'm leaving work to go home and check work email, I have been terrible at for years, and only more recently have tried to really set healthier boundaries and supportive routines and rhythms that help me actually leave work at work and create more of a predictable, consistent rhythm to the day. It's an important thing we can all do. Okay, now in terms of healthy support systems, just want to spotlight a few things here that might be examples of what you could build into your own workplace supports. I want to really try to have value added to everybody who's stuck with us. So scroll through this list and please jump into the chat if any of these resonate with you as something you're already doing or you love doing. Form or attend a peer support or a discussion group or book club. I heard that book club one already. Asked to take a walk or debrief with a coworker. Leaving gratitude notes or just expressions of gratitude or appreciation. Giving compliments or praise for a job well done. Sharing moments of either grace and goosebumps, those things that really give you the goosies that are so exciting, that come up as positive work outcomes, or where you just feel like you need to give yourself or others grace and you're actually able to pull that off, or sharing highs or lows with your team. Telling jokes, having potlucks, celebrating special events. Okay, great. I'm seeing folks weigh into the chat. And now I finally want to invite you, if you want to kind of use this space for accountability, what on this list or extra that isn't named here might you want to try to experiment with in the next few months? What could you add into your workflow that really supports you in the workplace and really others? Kind of, it usually goes beyond just the individual, these sorts of strategies. Yeah, sharing gratitude. I'm working on that one right now as well. And it's like, I think many of us know that it's helpful and important to express gratitude, but it's or through notes or emails, or maybe keep some sort of a gratitude journal. There's an app called a 3 Good Things practice. That is one thing I'm using to kind of record my 3 good things or what I can be grateful for. And I don't do it daily, but weekly is still a really significant amount. All right, I'm glad that you all are weighing into the chat. Okay. So I want to just briefly spotlight this tool that you may want to kind of dig into and learn a little bit more. It's called low impact processing or debriefing, and it's a trauma informed way of actually connecting with our colleagues and not accidentally sliming them with all the trauma and stressor related details of the stories that maybe are sitting hard and heavy with us. And there's some simple guidance that encourages us all to pause before we just volcano like our stress onto a colleague or coworker or family member, and try to hold some self-awareness of what is getting us stuck or ruminating and what do we really need to share versus what details can we maybe save. And that helps to reduce the exposure on others. Yes, I will make sure to share these slides, like the PDF of these slides, because I want this content to be freely available to everyone. Thank you for asking. Okay, I know that I need to kind of hurry it up and move a little faster, so I'm not leaving you all kind of too long in this space. I want to just touch on reflective practice as a really important domain that can support your well-being and help to mitigate STS. And it can look a lot of ways. Essentially, it's learning how to pay attention to the types of situations and events that trigger or overwhelm you or get you feeling unsafe or out of control or alarmed. And I'm going to provide you with some examples of reflective prompts that are some kind of questions you can ask yourself and maybe silently reflect on or journal about, or find a colleague that's a trusted other that you can kind of spontaneously reflect in this way. So these are some of the questions that I found really important to my practice. What are your most salient signs and symptoms of work distress? And when are you most likely to notice these things come up? When could you take stock on a regular basis? Also, what youth and family histories or stories tend to bring up strong emotions and reactions in you? And how might that connect with your own history or norms or personal vulnerabilities? How might that influence or change your interactions when these spots, like the hot emotions, usually lead to hot spots, or the soft spots are more like when we have kind of a special, when we treat certain people in our lives as sort of special because we feel like we're so similar to them or we resonate so much. And that might lead us to kind of treat individuals with accidental and inadvertent bias or kind of more or less favorably. Those are soft spots. And when our spots get activated, it's so important to pause and have reflective practice. Some of the kiddos in our lives can be very good at triggering some of these hot and soft spots. What emotions tend to be most difficult for you to feel during the workday, either with coworkers or supervisees or supervisors? And how might that relate to the way emotions were handled in your own family of origins, like various emotions that were allowed or not at home growing up, or from other key influences? These are some examples and some more examples that I really want to refer you all back to in the resource guide. There's a nice reflective practice page that highlights these questions that I hope this training so far has kind of gotten you thinking about. And this is the sort of thing that I hope you can bring into kind of your work after this training and into your reflective practice. What are the salient signs and symptoms of STS for you? What are those warning signs? What are your vulnerabilities and risk factors? How might you protect yourself while doing the challenging work that you do? And what can you do or do you do at the end of a workday to put those difficult stories or stressors away? Okay. What I need to do is kind of apologize to all of you for not saving a ton of time to be able to really unpack and dig into this and discuss with your colleagues in this space today. And instead of that, I'm hoping that you can bring this into your work days in the coming weeks or months and maybe find someone to be able to reflect and connect with. Okay, I want to quickly cover what the last little bit of content and then turn it back to ACF leadership. There are more types of reflective practice that are focused around race, culture, and identity, and those intersections of our identities that encourage us to take the time to reflect and build peer support around the ways that your identities and history and background can affect your responses. Here are some of those types of questions that prop up this level of reflective practice. Consider your own identities and how they influence the way you see the world and your work, the way you understand the kids and families with whom you support and serve. And check in with yourself. When you think about your work and your community, how do you feel? And how do factors related to your identities contribute both to your resilience and to your STS and other types of distress? And who can you talk to about these feelings? That's the reflect part. And then there is a connect kind of level that is so important, where I want to encourage everyone to connect with others to build that mutual support, however it feels safe and right for you to add that into your work world, through informal or supportive discussions with peers, maybe processing groups or peer support groups, or maybe outside of the workplace, seeking out any kind of community events or ceremonies or supports. And really, it's essential to be honest and real about the injustices you're seeing playing out in the world that are hurting your heart, and trying to hold space for idealism, hope, and optimism. Okay. So I am going to move on past this because I don't think we have time for a breakout. And rather than that, we want to turn it back over to ACF leadership to close us out and make sure you all know about the kind of resource guide and extra takeaways that you have from today's session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cuellar. This was wonderful, and we really appreciate your time and just being willing to sit with us and share all of the tools and resources from today. As we close out, I know we won't have time for the smaller group discussions, but if anyone wants to add in the chat what really stood out to them from this training that you're going to walk away from today with, we would love to just kind of hear your thoughts. And we'll also be putting a post survey link in the chat for you as well. But thank you so much, Dr. Raven, again, and it was wonderful to spend some time with you today. What you can expect after we end today's call is a few things. You can go to the next slide. So from NCTSN and Dr. Raven's resources, we've created a resource guide for ACF employees. So we already put it in the calendar invite for today's session, as well as we'll be sending it out in an all staff email with a recording to the session for those who are unable to attend today. And then we also have a separate resource guide for supervisors that's really just a one-pager with some resources. So you can expect that if you're a supervisor, we'll probably send it out on the supervisor teams page. And then you can go to the next slide. We would ask that you take a post-session survey. We offer the Well at Work sessions at least 2 times a year, and your feedback really helps us kind of understand what's helpful, what we should shift going forward, what topics might be really important for our ACF workforce currently. So we'll put that link again in a post-session email to everyone, and would really appreciate your feedback on that. Review the follow-up materials. Let us know what questions you have. We'll be sharing Dr. Raven's slide as well in a PDF. So please feel free to follow up with additional questions. And then, of course, if you found this helpful, we love if you can help spread the word. We also have a Wellbeing Champions group that meets every other month, and encourage you to join our group. It's an open group for anyone who'd like to participate. And then you can go to the next slide. We always end with some resources for our ACF colleagues. The assessments and screening tools, many of them will be either, well, all of them will either be in Dr. Raven's slides or in the resource guide. And then we also have a list of mental health resources. So of course, as ACF employees, you always have access to our employee assistance program. But then we also have some other resources listed, like the 988 Lifeline, the NCTSN network, which Dr. Raven is lead in, and then several other mental health resources that you can access. We also offer mental health first aid trainings quarterly. So if you haven't participated in one of those, we'd encourage you to join us for those. And again, our team has a really, we love to hear from staff and have kind of one-on-one meetings to hear how things are going for you and how we can better support. So we would love to hear that from you. And before we close, let me just go ahead and put the survey link in the chat, so you don't have to wait for any post-session email. If you're here now, you can go ahead and complete the survey now, and we'll be sending it out later as well. But thank you so much for your time. We know how important our work at ACF is, and we also know the impact that it can have on each of us in our lives. So thank you for taking the time with us today to really dive into this topic. And I hope what is a really hopeful message that yes, this is a risk of the type of work that we do, and there is so much that we can do at the organizational team and individual level to protect ourselves and manage through when we have those secondary traumatic stress reactions. So thank you again, Dr. Cuellar. Thank you, Dramatic, for opening us up as well. And you are free to drop. Thank you, everyone. Take good care. Thanks for joining.